Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined once again by Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we're looking at 5 games here on a Tuesday night. Nate and I are back together after a day of doing separate videos, but still going undefeated together there in Battle Day, as we might call it moving forward. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Got another game video up for you tonight and our player props as well. Also want you to head to thelines.com, I should say. That's where we have all of our great written content for you guys this season and our odds finder tool that you can use to make sure that you are getting the best juice back from all these U.S. sportsbooks giving you NBA bets this season. Nate, let's go ahead and get into this 5-game slate tonight and then talk about Kings and Suns.
Yeah, the other game we break down, Celtics are up to plus 8.5 in Milwaukee with Tatum doubtful. Brown and Smart are ruled out. That totals at 225, though. We do like the over, and I kind of think the Celtics can cover still. Magic are plus 7 at Toronto. The Kings, as we mentioned, plus 2.5 at Suns. 233 total here. Warriors on a back-to-back, plus 8.5 at the Clips. And then the Wizards plus 3.5 at Portland. Both teams on a back-to-back there. And by the way, we do have odds up now for the All-Star game, Team Giannis and LeBron. We'll address that before that All-Star weekend and talk about some things you might want to bet on there. Of course, going in with the Elam ending again should be exciting. But Suns and Kings here. And the Suns, they don't have KD yet, but they do have a shot in the arm. And I mean, they have Book back at least a little bit. It's good. The biggest thing is going to be like, what's his minutes limit at this point? He's played 2 games of their last 5 and been on what looks like a strict 26-minute count. But they haven't played since February 10th. So maybe at this point he's up to 30 minutes. We'll see. I mean, he's been a killer against the Kings in his last 4, 31 points per game, a plus 43, shooting 51% from the field. And the Suns won the last 3 meetings, all of them in Sacramento. So now they're at home. Whether Book's a part-time player or not, I do think that they have the advantage here because they've kind of just, sparked themselves defensively and from a competitive standpoint. I mean, they're in that funk for months. And then they get this huge trade, and now they're suddenly a championship contender, and I think that kind of cures a lot of ails. So in this 5-game road trip, since getting smacked by Atlanta at home to start the month, they are number 1 in terms of opponents' field goal shooting, number 3 limiting points off turnovers, allowing just 105 points per game with a 107 defensive rating. And that's, really impressive in certain margins at home that you need to stop the Kings, including the fast break points, the points off turnovers. They're number 6 in defensive efficiency overall at home. And the Kings, we look at, they're the highest scoring team in the NBA, but they score 8.5 fewer on the road. They shoot 6 percentage points worse from 3 on the road. They're 18-9 to the under on the road. The reason I'm worried about just saying let's hit the under is that the Kings defense has collapsed in their last 5. 2 of them against Dallas in overtime there, but they're allowing 127. They're 28th in opponents' field goal percentage, dead last in 3-point percentage. But they're a bad team guarding the mid-range all year and for several years, and that's why Booker has cooked them. What they do well is limit fast break points, and that doesn't matter. The Suns slow it down and play in the half court, especially with Chris Paul. Another reason to kind of lean under here, that they do play slower. And that, if Book isn't going to be a full-time player, you don't have to look at his splits on-off as much as you do like CP3 running the show, where they play 4 possessions slower. They score 6 points per game fewer this year. It all points to, kind of that knockdown, drag-out game that the Suns are much more likely to win with those 2 guys available than the Kings are. The Kings would much rather play an up-and-down game, which they do in Sacramento all the time, but they just have a hard time getting that kind of pace going on the road. And that's why they've struggled on the road to win, to go over. And they've actually struggled with extra rest, which they have here, 4-13 straight up, 3-9 against the spread on 2 to 3 days rest, and not a good record as road dogs as well. So Suns, I lean on covering just 2.5 points.
Yeah, I think you rely on what you know right now for this one. Sacramento as away dogs, not the worst record against the spread, 8-6 when they're away from home as underdogs against the spread, failing to cover by 5 points or so. Well, they're losing by about 5 points a game in those situations. I mean, as the away team in general, we know that they've been struggling all season as well. Decent against the spread though. That's the thing, is like they hang close in the games where they're not necessarily favored or expected to do much, but they don't necessarily do that by scoring a ton of points. What they've been doing on the road, and it's basically, I would say, their last roughly like 7 road games since basically the end of January. They had a couple the back-to-backs against Mini, and then the after that they were on the 7-game road trip, and so they in that time frame, they won a few. They played the Rockets twice, the Timberwolves twice, the Mavericks twice. So it was like a weird thing to kind of look at, because it was a bunch of those away and aways or home and homes for them. And in that time frame, though, you look at kind of like what they were doing, throughout the game. Interestingly, they have a really good fourth quarter net rating during that time, where they went basically 4-3 on the road in that time frame. But like I said, just playing much worse teams and teams that play a little bit more similarly to them in their style of play, like the Pacers, if you want to call the Rockets a style of play, and then the Spurs, right? Like teams that like to open it up and just keep the ball moving up and down the court pretty fast, because they don't have much else going for them in terms of offensive, let's say, efficiency, which is not the Kings, but it's just a more similar up and down style that I think that they were sort of almost the better team in those situations a lot. And this isn't the case here. And I think the way that you talked about how Phoenix has been playing, I'm really just looking at their last two right now, and even though they're not playing the best comp in the last two, obviously the Hawks have been giving them fits throughout the season at this point in the last two that they've played them. You said it, they're basically 7-0 against teams not named Atlanta Hawks right now in their last 9 games. But in terms of the offense and the defense that they've been playing in that time frame, it's been getting contributions from guys like Josh Okogie and DeAndre Ayton during that time frame, both of whom are averaging over 20 points a game during that time. And I think you can expect, with Booker back in the lineup, for things to just sort of continue along that way. I mean, none of them are getting in his way with what they're doing, and I think he's just going to come in and be the complement that they need. Like you said, you kind of briefly mentioned, he crushes this Kings team, and just as importantly, I think for the offense, you talk about how much better it is with him on versus off, and 7 points better per game, and in terms of per 100 possessions as well. But CP3 being on the floor also is a big boost for him, and a big boost for CP3's efficiencies as well. I mean, he scores way more points and gets a fewer assists once Book's not out there, as you might expect. But the way that the offensive individual offensive rating that he has when Book is out there is about 4 points better per 100, because of the fact that he's able to just kind of keep things flowing. He has that extra threat always that he can rely on to sort of bail him out no matter what situation the offense is in, with Booker getting his shot up over everybody. So the sort of pace of play, I do expect it to be a little bit chunkier. The Kings have been on the road since that time frame that I was talking about in their last roughly 8 on the road. They're actually playing at a pace that's down to 10th fastest or whatever, or I'm sorry, 15th or so. It's 98 at this point, or 99. So it's not even like they're playing at that normal 102 that they're playing with when they're at home at that in Sacramento. So I think the under is a good play, because I think Phoenix is going to sort of dominate the style of play. They're going to dominate, controlling the tempo and the ball itself. In my opinion, I know Sac wants to get up and down and do their thing that way rather than set up in the half court, and that's exactly where Phoenix can continue to stop you, as they've been limiting fast break points, like you said, and limiting transition offense in general. So not a ton of ways that I find Sac is going to be able to score tonight, and I think Phoenix is going to be able to control this thing.
Yeah, and just some numbers to support this matchup. The Kings are 2-5 in their last 7 against the Suns, and those wins, one was the final game of last season where the Suns had already locked up everything. The other was Game 4. Which they started 1-3, if you guys remember, and then they just rattled off 25 out of their next 28 wins and just completely went off. And the Kings, even when they're at home and they're scoring more, the games have averaged 234 versus 226 their last 3 in Phoenix, with a pace 5 possessions slower. And even in those home games where they've scored, I mean, they have a 108 offensive rating, just very poor efficiency, and sort of depending on unsustainable 42% 3-point shooting, which, as we mentioned, is just far, far worse on the road. And Malik Monk is also out, so that takes away another sniper for them. I just don't think, that they're going to be able to score enough. And whatever the numbers are in wins and losses for the Kings, I'm sure they have to score a lot more in wins. They're just not a very good defensive team. especially down low and in the mid range where the Suns are going to do their work.
Yeah, and actually also especially against point guards, which is kind of why I like Chris Paul a little bit in our player props. Not even a little bit. I like Chris Paul in our player props because I do think that the shot in the arm that you talked about with KD sitting there waiting in the wing, I think that gives them a much more, let's just say Chris Paul's motivation is going to be high. I think he sees the championship window now, and I think he has obviously good reason to believe that this is, if not their last opportunity, maybe their second to last, and they need to get things going right now. And I think we're going to see that from him as he dominates the Kings tonight. So that's all the time we have for you in this one. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Got a couple other videos up for you, including our player props that we went 12-0 combined last night on. So until we see you next, happy betting.